And we're back. Guys, today we're talking about one-to-one time. You guys wanted to know, what is it? How does it work? I have been mentioning it a lot in my videos over the past few months, and I think it's important that we finally define this thing and get a video out there on the topic. A one-to-one timekeeping system is really just a way to activate your campaign and turn it into an always-on game. The rule for one-to-one time says that for every day that passes in the real world calendar, a day passes in your game world calendar. So what does that mean exactly? Let's pretend. Let's have a scenario. It's game night. It's Friday, and we'll say that it's April 1st. You are playing at the table with your friends. You decide to go to the Goblin Castle that is 3 days march away. So you're marching on April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in game. You're tracking, the DM is tracking this on the calendar. You are fighting the goblins, you're looting, you're tracking time on the smaller scale in the dungeon, and then you're going to march back for 3 days on the 4th, 5th, and 6th. Your character is now in what's called time jail until April 6th. Now, this is the in-game calendar. Your character is in time jail until April 6th. But let's say in the real world, you guys get together on April 5th and you want to play Dungeons and Dragons. The issue is, how can my character play on the 5th if he's still traveling back to town on the 6th? The answer is, the character is locked up, you cannot play them. You have to roll up a new character. Now, this idea of rolling up another character, playing multiple PCs in the same game world is I think one of the major complaints that people have for implementing one-to-one time. People grow attached to their PCs, which is completely understandable. They want to play them when they show up on game night. And with this one-to-one time system, they can't see the benefit of it. They're losing game time with their character. And so they're forced to play multiple PCs, and this idea is not very interesting for some people. And I get that. There are several obstacles that you're going to face if you implement one-to-one time into your campaign. And so I think it is important that if we're going to have this conversation, that it's really frank and you're upfront. Yes, there are some minor inconveniences, but the benefits from implementing one-to-one time, I think, are spectacular. So, how does this change your game? A standard game, a traditional RPG, you might adventure in that goblin castle and you will be halfway through the adventure and game night's wrapping up and your DM will say something like, okay, we're going to stop right there. We'll pick it up next time. We'll see what's beyond the door in the goblin cave and maybe you can rescue the princess. With a one-to-one time game, the players are directed by time constraints to be very efficient with their time at the table. If they cannot complete the goblin quest and save the princess, they have to get back to town. They cannot just hang out in the goblin cave for a week, because during that week, the goblins are going to be walking around their castle or their fortress, and they're going to stumble upon the PCs and they're going to call in everybody at the same time and overwhelm them while the players are away from the table. So one of the fundamental aspects of one-to-one time is you have to, no matter what, manage your time well and get back to town at the end of session. So what if there's not enough time to save the princess? What if your players are bumping into things on the road and maybe they stop to buy some gear or magic potion and time runs out at the table, they have to turn back and leave? What happens to the princess? Well, if we're going to be referee like dungeon masters and we're going to portray these goblins as monsters that actually want to win, in that scenario, they sacrifice the princess or they sell her off to some enemy or something. Whatever their plans were, they get to carry those out. And so this creates a level of dynamism that you're not going to see at a traditional table. I always, I mean, maybe you will. I'm not trying to tell people how they play at home. I don't know how you play at home. But for me, when I was running traditional games, the PCs would do whatever it is that they were going to do in town. They would travel for a while, chat, joke with each other. There's always like the funny beer jokes that come out when people are having beer and pizzas, and then they'd make it to the cave and they'd goof around for a while. They'd get a couple of rooms done, and then we'd pause the game, and then we'd come back. And every time, every session, it seemed that they would just arrive at the castle at the right time to stop the ceremony, to stop the ritual, to stop the sacrifice. And while as a DM, sometimes it feels really good to be able to control the pacing of the world, it feels artificial to anyone who's looking at it, even just a little bit closely. Sometimes players want just a little bit more out of their games, and they want to be challenged, and this is one way you can do it. If they are not on top of their game, if they are not hustling to get to the princess and making sacrifices, we're not going to be able to check out this room. We're not going to be able to chase that trail. We need to get to the princess. We only have a couple hours left at the table, and we can't leave her here for another week. But the monster could win. And that to me is so exciting. We've talked about patrons before and how patron NPCs are players that can't make it to game night, but they will take control of powerful NPCs in your world. If you are using one-to-one time and you add patrons in with like larger groups, if you have several people that want to play D&D that this is a great way to use that. They are going to be using one-to-one time, just like your PCs are. They're going to be making massive plays like invading countries, destroying kingdoms, sieging castles, making treaties. All of these different plays that powerful NPCs in your world could take advantage of. If you do not have a strict timekeeping system set up, it will be completely unbalanced and unfair for everyone else at the table. One example of this is there is a general. He is a high-level fighter character, and he has an army, and he wants to invade this other city. If you are not closely tracking and limiting your player by time, that player will say, I go to invade them, I build all these trebuchets, we destroy the walls, we break into the city, we do this, this, and this, and this. With timekeeping that is very strict and fair and balanced for everyone, other players are able to react to the machinations and plots of everyone else at the table. There will be a level of chaos and disorder that is so exciting for everyone, including the dungeon master, if you're using one-to-one time. Players might try to craft new spells. They might just increase their statistics by, spending gold and training with weapons. These things are player-driven. They are player motivated. You will see a level of investment in your campaign that just doesn't exist in traditional stop or freeze time play. When you can play anytime you want, you're no longer restricted by game night. You can play, it doesn't have to be Friday night anymore. You can play on Tuesday. You can play on Wednesday through text, through play-by-post, Discord channels. It is an always-on game if you're using one-to-one time. Always-on games are so much more fun than traditional games. I can't go back to traditional games. I was talking to my buddy. He had this question about 5e. He's really frustrated how, and this is a common thing with 5e, is that the players can just take a full rest. They get all their hit points back. They get all of their spell slots back. They want to abuse that mechanic so that way they're always ready. When it comes time for the big fight, they're always going to be ready with maximum efficiency and power. And I was telling him, you don't have to change much. He was like, how do I fix this? And I told him, I was like, you don't really have to change much. All you have to do is implement one-to-one time. If the players are traveling a long distance and the princess is going to be sacrificed by the goblins, and they're deciding to take a long rest. Well, she got sacrificed by the time you even showed up, because it took 3 days of game time to travel there. It takes, you rested 4 times because, you always wanted to have maximum hit points. All of these things are curtailed in 5e if you use one-to-one time. If without it, it's arbitrary. It's just DMify it. He'll just say, okay, well, you rest 5 times, whatever. You still show up right when the ritual is about to begin. And, maybe there are those DMs who say, well, not in my table. I would just let the goblins win. And maybe that's true. But I have yet to see it in action, and I've played 5th editions, and I still play sometimes. I've been playing 5th edition since like 2014 or 2015 is when I bought the book. And every DM that I've ever played with is you show up right when the adventure is about to begin, and there's never any, well, it already happened. But in my one-to-one time game, which has been the longest running campaign I've been a part of, this is the 19th month in April, we've had multiple scenarios where the bad guys have won. We've had entire cities where our players grew up and like all their backstories took place. They're completely decimated, and those armies are now raised as undead because this dread lord is this chaos knight is summoning undead, and he's going to take over the world. We've got plots going on where the Baron, actually, for those of you who know Barrowmaze by Greg Gillespie, the Baron in my world was assassinated by this Inquisition, this leader of the church, because he left himself exposed. And each player was getting to make their own plays. Like, one was trying to make a peace accord, the other one was pretending to be peaceful and kind of did a red wedding scenario. We have an assassin guild leader who is spying on everyone, and he's like sending out little murder units into each city. He's trying to play the Game of Thrones, but not as like one of the lords, but rather he's going to be a kingmaker. He's going to choose who gets to be on the throne. All of these little things are happening, and I'm getting texts every day. Oh, my PC is doing research on gold dragons and who's nearby that we can make an alliance with, because the Dread Lord in the south has got a red dragon in his army. We need to fight fire with fire. We have people who are working with sages and oracles to unlock mysteries about how they've become mutated inside of one of these wacky gonzo dungeons, and now they're trying to get themselves cured. These games are happening, like this game is happening constantly, and I just want to share how much fun I've had with an always-on campaign and how starkly different the experience is with a traditional freeze time game. So, we've talked about how the travel will take up time, the time jail will lock up your character, how we've talked about the value and the importance of always ending your character back in town. He cannot stay in the dungeon, there are monster checks randomly, and your character will be eaten in the darkness if you are not back in town. So, why do we do that? What is the principle behind that outside of just random monster checks? There is a secondary factor to it, and it is the cure-all to the campaign killer, which, in my opinion, in the 11 years I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons, the campaign killer is scheduling. With an always-on campaign, people that can't make the weekly session, maybe they have to miss 2 weeks in a row, they can still play through text. They can still be advancing their character's goal. Maybe they want to do some pit fighting in the arena. They can't show up to game, but they have 2 weeks now where they can make some gold, earn some XP. They might level up in downtime, come back to the table with more hit points, with more chance of survival. Getting back to town secures that there's not going to be a time paradox where you're about to open the door to the Goblin Cave when, oh, let's stop time. The 4 guys who are here today, everybody be here next week. But again, like Gary or Dave, whatever, he texts you the day before, I can't make it. So now you've got 3 guys who are about to walk into the door, and everybody looks around like, where's Gary? Where's Dave? And there's this like unspoken like silliness in the game. It's like, oh, we can just pretend that he's not here, or oh, he walked off, or oh, he's there, he's just not contributing or talking or doing whatever. Or even worse, the DM has to take control of that PC and he gets that character killed and the player had no agency whatsoever. I despise that dynamic in a 5th edition or Pathfinder game, a modern game, and it has turned me off so much. This problem is cured with one-to-one time. Players go back to town no matter what, and the adventure always starts after a few days of rest and people are heading out together. So they form their party at the beginning of every session and that the party abandons each other at the end of every session. This is dynamic. It's fun. If you have lots of players, it is great because you can just bring new people in, making new friends. There's always like a rotation of PCs. But one of the big complaints is, well, I don't need this, Mike. I only have 3 players, and we always come every week. This isn't for us. Why do we need one-to-one time? Well, aside from getting to play different classes, you can advance your character's goals, still use the downtime lockup system, and you're still going to be getting the benefits of one-to-one time because your players are still going to get to be texting you. They're still going to be able to play in the always-on campaign. They're getting this dynamism that comes from one-to-one time, regardless if there's a huge group or if it's a small group. So 5e can use it, Pathfinder can use it, old school games should definitely be using it. And yet we're still going to see people say, this isn't for me, I don't like this, here's why. What happens if we do stay in the dungeon? Well, time keeps ticking. The monsters find your guys camped out somewhere. Unless if you guys are very clever with a lot of invisibility spells and like invisibility rings and there's all sorts of really cool spells that you could do to try to like negate the random monster check, but time is not on your side and most likely you'll be eaten. But Mike, what happens if, my poor little PC is camped out in that city when the Dread Lord comes and destroys it? That's not fair. I'm going to just, my character is going to die and I don't even get to do anything about it. Well, in that scenario, you can text the player, say, hey, look, there's an invading force. Can that player escape using the escape rules, the pursuit rules in Old School Essentials? And if they can, they get away. If they can't, they die. Yeah, this is a lot more unforgiving. The system can be brutal. There are all sorts of ways that the players will feel like time is this machine that's always pumping forward, and if they don't keep up, things could get out of control. And while that can be a little frustrating for some people, it is really exciting for others. You're going to find guys at your table, guys and girls at your table that love that idea. They are always plotting and making these really cool negotiations with other people. They're always texting you and making the game more alive and more fun. And there are systems in every version of RPGs that has downtime. Like in 5th edition, look at Xanathar's Guide. You're going to see all sorts of activities that these people can do, and they say it takes 1 week of time. If you don't track time, if you're just saying everything freezes at the end of the session, they go back to town, or they complete the mission, then at the end of that mission, they go back to town. It's only been 1 day in the game world, but they've already leveled up twice, and then they want to go on their next adventure. Where does that player who finds the excitement of crafting magic items or building a keep and doing warfare, when do they get their opportunity to shine? I know that there are people who really enjoy the shopping aspect of D&D, hunting down magic items and buying them from a vendor. This is a downtime activity. This is something that you can let your player do with you. You can role play the fun shopkeeper. They get to have that great experience, and they're not dragging down every other player at the table with, what the other players might see as tedious or monotonous. I think that there is one example that I have yet to be able to address with any sort of authenticity, and I think that they kind of catch us on this. And this is using one-to-one time. There can be a time paradox where one group, let's say Group A, chooses to go to a city, and they have to travel for 2 weeks to get to this city, and they want to, destroy the city. That's their goal, right? And they should be able to do that. And they do that on Friday on game night. They travel for 2 weeks, and it takes them a week to destroy the city. They're 3 weeks ahead in time jail. And then there's Group B, who's only 1 day away from that group, or from that city that they want to destroy. And they meet with you, not game night on Friday, but the following week. So while that other group is still traveling in game world, this other group comes and they destroy the city first. But on Friday the week before, you've already described how they spent 2 weeks traveling and they spent a week destroying the city. So how do you deal with that time paradox? The only thing that I've never had it come up in game, and I don't think that this rare edge corner case should stop you from implementing one-to-one time, but the only thing I can think of to address something like that is don't allow your in-game clock to push too far ahead. If your players choose to travel for 2 weeks and go to some faraway land to accomplish their goal, what you can do is you say, guys, you roll up the travel, make sure everybody gets there safe, and then you say, all right, in 2 weeks you'll arrive there, and in 2 weeks we will play that out at the table. For now, roll up some new characters and we'll do something else tonight. It might not be as satisfying as getting to play the mission that you wanted, but if you're pushing things too far ahead in time, you're gonna start facing paradoxes. We don't deal with that at my table because everything happens in one duchy, so it's like 10 hexes, 20 by 10 hexes. So it's everything you can get to, you can travel to in about a week. It's not too hard. And so you're not really facing these like massive time paradoxes. But that is the one critique that we've gotten, that I don't see anybody who advocates for one time being able to answer it with any kind of like satisfying answer. And so I will grant you that. But if you are using one-to-one time, I think you're going to find that your game completely transforms. You've got players who are shifting the political landscape constantly. You have player-driven actions, so the DM gets to take a step back, gets to focus on world building, plots for one or two NPCs, hand off some of the other stuff to patron players. The PCs at the table are directing the course of adventure. On adventure night, they say, hey, Mike, we want to go into the Barrow Maze, or Mike, we want to go into the Keep on the Borderlands, we want to go into the Goblin Cave. And that's what you get to focus your prep on. With these massive sandbox style games, like a lot of people consider this to be a West Marches game. It's actually not. It's bigger than West Marches. It's West Marches Plus. But with these always on campaigns, the DM actually has an easier job managing it just through text, like, oh yeah, you resolve you scribe that spell. Good job, man. You're going to be done on the 8th of April. It's so much easier. It's so much more fun. Your players are going to love this if you give it a try. I think it's a blast. I really think everybody should be using it. I can never go back to a traditional game. And so if you try one-to-one time at home, leave a comment in the description down below or in the comment section. I would love to hear from you guys about your experiences with one-to-one time, or if you want to start implementing it, that would be so cool. Hit like and subscribe, and if you want to learn more about patrons, check out this video here at the end. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.